I want to talk about this latest revelation from the Nixon administration by, what is this guy's? John Eric Ehrlichman. Can't pronounce that. John Ehrlichman. He was a former advisor to Richard Nixon, and he was a part of the Watergate scandal. He actually spent time in prison because of the Watergate scandal, and he was not pardoned in time by Richard Nixon. And so, as back in 1994, he was doing an interview with Dan Baum, and he stated that the reason for the drug war, the entire purpose of the drug war, was to vilify people on the left and African Americans. Let me read you his quote. This is Ehrlichman. He said, "You want to know what this was really all about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies. They had two enemies, and the anti-war people, anti-war movement, and black people." You understand what I'm saying? This is Ehrlichman. He said, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black." Oh, let me just read it before I react. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing them both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them on the evening, every night on the evening news. Did we know what we were doing? Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. This is the power of establishment politics, by the way. I have to read this again. I just want to read the first sentence again, because like, we knew this. I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked by this, but to just hear it put so bluntly by somebody who was actually in the position to actually make this happen is, I guess, sobering, maybe the word. We knew we could not make it illegal to be either against the war or black. That says so much in terms of the psychopathy, the sickness that's in the minds of people who take their opposition to the point of outright suppression, criminalization, destroying the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. They were so against, they viewed people on the left, leftists, people who are against the war, hippies, and African Americans. They view them through the lens of so much hatred that they actually considered in their mind that, damn, we can't make it illegal to be black, because if we could, we would. You know, if we could just lock your ass up for being black, we would. But since we can't, what we're going to do is make your blackness and your progressiveness associated with things that are scary and criminal, drugs. And by making you and your very presence associated with drugs, and we vilify and criminalize drugs, we therefore, by extension, criminalize blackness and people in the anti-war movement. So in 1971, Nixon kicked off the war on drugs, declaring that drugs were public enemy number one. By 1973, over 300,000 people a year were being arrested. That's 1973. In 2009, 1.6 million people were arrested for drugs. Most, 82%, not just 82% for mere possession. That's one person every 19 seconds being arrested for drugs, 82% of them just for possession. The war on drugs, not just, you know, here's the other thing. I didn't get time to pull up actual stats and data and evidence, but you know, when you think about the realities of it in the 1970s, you know, the overwhelming presence of drugs in the Black community, you know, nobody Black have a plane to fly it here. We didn't have ships to bring it over across the sea. We didn't have the infrastructure to bring it into the neighborhoods. We just had the guys who could get out there and build them a small little cartel inside of their neighborhoods, a structure inside of the neighborhoods, right? We could distribute it in the neighborhoods, right? So not only did they criminalize drugs, but they helped facilitate the flooding of African American communities with drugs. And the overwhelming people, not just 82% being arrested for possession alone, but the overwhelming people affected by this were African Americans. And the root cause of this, Ehrlichman says, was because, hey, if we could just make it illegal to be Black, we would have done that. But because we couldn't, we made heroin and Blackness synonymous, and we made heroin that much more illegal. This carried out this interview. Here's the second part about this entire conversation that's disturbing. This interview took place in 1994. This information about the root of the war on drugs was knowledge, public knowledge, in 1994. This quote just came out this week. In fairness, it did come out previously and no one really picked it up, but it had a second win and came out this week. And now everybody's like, damn. I'm not like damn, because I've always known that the war on drugs was there, particularly to assault the Black community. Here's another component of this that I want to elevate the conversation a little bit. Besides the damning nature of this, I want you to understand the inseparable relationship that progressives have with the African American community. Not so much that we have all things in common, because there's a lot that the Black community and the white progressives, Black progressives, the Black left, there's a lot that still needs to be worked out, right? I think that's fair. I think we can all say that. But you should understand that while we have some issues amongst progressives and Black progressives and white liberals and Black liberals and Hispanic liberals, and there's still some work that needs to be done, you need to understand that we have a common enemy because they view us as a common threat. And they've done so for a very long time. At least on the record now, at least since 1968. Since 1968, they wanted to criminalize people on the left and people who are Black, which speaks volumes to me today because of the natural alliance and the opportunity for an alliance that exists between, let's just say, Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter. But because of race, questions about race, that alliance has never been able to foment into a formidable force. But the people who are fighting against the cause that Occupy Wall Street fought for and still the remnants fight for, and the people who are fighting against the cause that Black Lives Matter fights for, they're the same group of people. And yet we miss that. and yet we can't get over or can't get beyond that which divides us, for us to take a minute and realize that we have a common enemy, a common political foe that does not only want to oppose us with ideology, but since 1968, they wanted to make it illegal to be a leftist and wanted to make it illegal to be Black. But hey, since we can't make it illegal to be Black or be leftist, let's just associate them with drugs and wage a holy war against drugs. I feel like Forrest Gump. That's all I've got to say about that. That's it. All right.